family betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. When someone you trust ridicules you behind your back, that wound festers in ways you never expect. My own son-in-law learned this lesson the hard way, though neither of us could have predicted how dramatically our roles would reverse in a single evening. She shows up looking like an ugly slob who wandered in off the street. God, I hope the board doesn't think we're related. Those words sliced through me like ice water through veins. I stood frozen near the buffet table at my daughter's mansion, clutching my small purse as my son-in-law Derek's voice carried across the marble floor. He thought I couldn't hear him laughing with his executive friends, mocking my simple green dress and sensible shoes. I'm Lorraine Matthews, 62 years old, with gray streaked hair always pulled back in a practical bun. Nothing about me screams wealthy or powerful. My cardigan collection and modest jewelry don't turn heads at fancy corporate parties. And that night, standing in my daughter Tasha's grand foyer surrounded by Atlanta's business elite, I felt every inch the outsider Derek clearly thought I was. What he didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that beneath my unassuming exterior beat the heart of a financial giant. The same hands he thought too plain to belong at his party had signed the papers acquiring his family's company just 3 days earlier. For 15 years, I'd built my fortune in absolute secrecy. While raising my daughter alone after my husband died, I turned a modest insurance payout into an empire worth billions, all without changing who I was or how I lived. I caught Tasha's eye across the room. My beautiful daughter, so accomplished, yet blind to her husband's true nature. Should I tell her what he'd said? Should I leave quietly and spare us all the humiliation? But then Gerald Patterson, Derek's father and founder of Patterson Tech Solutions, clinked his crystal glass for a toast. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced proudly, tonight we celebrate the dawn of a new era for our company. Little did he know just how new that era would be, or who would be leading it. I felt my phone vibrate in my purse. A text from my financial advisor. All set for the announcement? Are you ready? If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated, looked down upon, or treated as if you were invisible, this story is for you. Like and subscribe to join our community of people who understand that true power doesn't always announce itself with designer labels and loud voices. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Also, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. What happened next would reshape not just one arrogant man's future, but an entire family's understanding of respect, dignity, and the quiet power of patience. Sometimes, justice arrives not with thunderous revenge, but with a simple, dignified walk through the right door at precisely the right moment. Looking back, my journey to wealth began on the worst day of my life. When my husband Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack, I was left with a 4-year-old daughter, a mortgage, and a $250,000 life insurance policy. The money felt substantial then, enough to keep us afloat while I figured out our future. "Mama, when is Daddy coming home?" Tasha would ask, her small hands tugging at my sleeve. I'd hold her close, fighting back tears. "Daddy's with the angels now, baby, but he's watching over us." Those early years were brutal. I worked night shifts at Atlanta Memorial Hospital as a nurse, then picked up weekend office cleaning jobs. I'd come home with aching feet, sometimes crying in the shower so Tasha wouldn't hear me, but I never let her see me break. "You're the strongest person I know, Lorraine," my colleague Rita once told me. I wasn't strong, just determined that Tasha would have opportunities I never had. What changed everything was a chance conversation with an elderly patient named Mr. Winters. He was a retired real estate investor who took a liking to me during his hospital stay. "You're smart, practical, and you listen," he told me one night. 3 qualities that make a good investor. When he recovered, he offered to mentor me. I invested $50,000 of the insurance money into a rundown property in a neighborhood on Atlanta's west side. Everyone said I was crazy, but I had done my research. The city was planning infrastructure improvements there. 2 years later, I sold that property for triple my investment. By then, I'd finished my hospital administration degree and moved into management. Each raise, each bonus went straight into my next investment. Tasha bloomed into a brilliant young woman. I pushed her to excel in school, and she did, graduating with honors before earning her MBA. She never knew that by the time she finished college, my net worth had crossed 8 figures. "Mom, I don't understand why you still live in this little house," she'd say, exasperated. "You could afford something nicer." But I loved our modest 3-bedroom home with its creaking porch swing and hand-tended garden. Wealth hadn't changed me, and I wanted to keep it that way. Then came my biggest break. A young medical programmer named Raj approached me about investing in his healthcare security startup. Something in his determined eyes reminded me of myself. I put in $2 million into Medilink, almost everything I had at the time. 3 years later, that investment was worth over $300 million. By the time Tasha met Derek, I was secretly sitting on a fortune that would have made his family's wealth look modest by comparison. But only 3 people in the world knew: my attorney, my accountant, and my friend Rita. Derek swept into Tasha's life like a hurricane, handsome, charismatic, from a good family, as he never tired of mentioning. I saw how he dazzled her with expensive dates and grand gestures. "He makes me feel like a princess, Mom," she gushed. I smiled and nodded, but I noticed things: how the waitstaff tensed when he approached, how quickly his charm vanished when he didn't get his way, the dismissive glances he'd throw my way when Tasha wasn't looking. Still, I said nothing. This was Tasha's choice to make. 3 months before that fateful party, my investment group began examining Patterson Tech. The company had solid foundations, but was failing to innovate. Gerald was ready to retire, and Derek was floundering in his expanded role. My team approached them anonymously through LM Holdings, a private entity named after my initials. The board was enthusiastic, but Derek fought against the sale. "Some outside investor will gut the company," he argued in board meetings, unaware that the investor was his mother-in-law. What Derek didn't know was that the company was already in trouble his leadership was making worse, and the clock was ticking on a decision that would change all our lives forever. The night of the party, I almost didn't go. Something in my gut warned me to stay home with my books and my tea. But Tasha had called 3 times that week, insisting, "Please, Mom, it would mean the world to me. Derek says it's important to have family there." So I put on my best dress, a forest green number I'd worn to church functions for years. Simple pearl earrings, comfortable black flats, no makeup except for a touch of lip gloss and mascara. I even splurged on having my hair styled in its usual neat bun at the salon that morning. When I pulled up to their mansion in my 10-year-old Volvo, valets in crisp uniforms exchanged glances. One reluctantly took my keys. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors. Well-dressed couples clutched champagne flutes, their laughter tinkling like the expensive glassware. A young woman at the door handed me a name tag: Lorraine Matthews, Tasha's mom. Not Lorraine Matthews, hospital administrator. Not Lorraine Matthews, successful investor. Just Tasha's mom, as if that was all I could ever be. Tasha spotted me immediately, rushing over in her stunning blue gown. "Mom, you made it!" She kissed my cheek. "You look lovely." "You're the lovely one," I said, meaning it.
My daughter radiated confidence and grace. "Let me find Derek. He's talking to some board members." She disappeared into the crowd, leaving me adrift in a sea of strangers. I made my way to the buffet table, helping myself to a small plate of hors d'oeuvres. A waiter offered champagne, which I declined in favor of water. That's when I heard them. Derek and two men in expensive suits standing just behind a large floral arrangement. They didn't see me. "She insisted her mom come," Derek said, his voice loosened by alcohol. "I told her, 'Babe, this is a corporate event, not a church potluck.'" One of the men chuckled. "Family obligations, what can you do?" And then she shows up looking like an ugly slob who wandered in off the street. God, I hope the board doesn't think we're related. They burst into laughter. I stood frozen, the small plate trembling in my hands. The room suddenly felt too warm, too loud. My throat tightened. For 15 years, I'd lived modestly by choice. I'd raised a daughter alone, built a fortune from nothing, and conducted myself with dignity. And this man, this entitled, arrogant man who had married my daughter, thought it appropriate to mock me at his own party. I set my plate down carefully, hands still shaking. Should I confront him? Tell Tasha? Leave quietly? As I deliberated, Gerald Patterson approached. Derek's father had always treated me with polite, if distant, respect. "Lorraine, good to see you." He clasped my hand warmly. "I've been hoping to chat with you. There's someone I'd like you to meet." He guided me toward a distinguished woman in a tailored pantsuit. "This is Vivian Torres, our chief financial officer. Vivian, this is Tasha's mother, Lorraine." Vivian's handshake was firm. "A pleasure, Lorraine. Gerald mentioned you work in healthcare administration." "Yes, for nearly 20 years now." "Impressive." Something in her eyes suggested genuine interest. Healthcare is one sector we've been wanting to expand into. The right partnerships could be valuable. As we talked, I noticed Vivian's sharp intelligence and no-nonsense manner. I also noted how Gerald deferred to her on financial matters. My phone vibrated. A text from Rita. "Everything set for tomorrow's meeting. Final paperwork ready. Decision time." I glanced across the room. Derek was now holding court with a larger group, Tasha by his side. She was laughing, unaware of what he had said minutes earlier. I had a choice to make. The acquisition was set to be announced tonight. In less than 30 minutes, Gerald would be making his speech. And I had to decide, would I step forward as the new owner of Patterson Tech, or remain in the shadows, preserving the peace, but swallowing my dignity once again? The weight of 15 years of secrecy pressed down on me. Whatever I decided, nothing would ever be the same after tonight. My wealth didn't happen by accident. It was built methodically, investment by investment, risk by calculated risk. After the success with Metalink, I formed LM Holdings as my private investment vehicle. Few people knew the company existed, and fewer still knew who owned it. I preferred operating behind layers of privacy, not out of shame, but strategic advantage. People underestimate what they don't see coming, Mr. Winters had taught me years ago. Use that. Through my healthcare connections, I identified promising medical technology startups before they hit mainstream radar. I invested early, offered guidance, and watched them grow. By 60, my portfolio included partial ownership of 12 healthcare companies, 36 commercial properties, and a venture capital fund focused on women-led businesses, all managed from the same desk where I'd once struggled to pay bills. My interest in Patterson Tech began unexpectedly. During a hospital board meeting, our CTO complained about their outdated patient management software. "Patterson used to be innovative, but they've stagnated under the new leadership," he said. That new leadership was Derek. His father had groomed him for years, gradually giving him more control. What Gerald didn't realize was that his son excelled at presentation, not execution. My research team confirmed what hospital administrators across the Southeast was saying. Patterson's products were falling behind. Their last 3 software updates had been delayed. Customer complaints were rising. Meanwhile, Derek was expanding his personal lifestyle. A new vacation home, a luxury car collection, memberships to exclusive clubs. The company's fundamentals are strong, my financial advisor reported. Their problem is leadership. 2 months before the party, I arranged a meeting with Gerald, not as Tasha's mother, but as a representative of LM Holdings. He didn't make the connection. Why would he? He knew me only as a hospital administrator who wore sensible shoes. We believe in Patterson's potential, I told him across his mahogany desk. With the right direction, this company could double its value in 5 years. Gerald was intrigued but cautious. My son has his own vision for the company's future. Of course, I nodded respectfully, but our analysis suggests his approach may not be sustainable long term. I left him with a detailed proposal and a serious offer. Within days, the board was discussing it, with Derek the loudest voice of opposition. This mystery buyer wants to steal the company out from under us, he argued. What he really meant was out from under him. What Derek didn't know was that Patterson was facing a liquidity crisis. The company had overextended on an acquisition he'd championed, and now creditors were circling. Gerald had capped this from Derek, trying to protect both his son and the company's reputation. But the board knew, and they were worried. Meanwhile, Derek's professional problems were mounting. 3 key executives had resigned in the past year. A major client was threatening to switch providers. And Derek's solution was to throw lavish corporate events like tonight's party to boost morale and strengthen client relationships. In reality, he was rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. 1 week before the party, Gerald called me, still unaware of who I really was. LM Holdings' offer is the best we've received, he admitted. But I need to know, will you retain our employees? Most of them, yes, I assured him. Our goal isn't to dismantle what works. It's to fix what doesn't. He hesitated. And my son? I chose my words carefully. We'd need to evaluate all executive positions based on performance. 3 days before the party, Gerald signed the preliminary agreement. The final papers would be signed the next morning. Tonight was meant to be the public announcement. Now, standing in Derek and Tasha's grand foyer, watching my son-in-law laugh with his friends minutes after calling me an ugly slob, I felt a moment of doubt. Was I doing this for the right reasons? Would revealing myself destroy my relationship with Tasha? My phone buzzed again. Another text from my advisor. Gerald is asking if the LM Holdings representative will be at the party for the announcement. What should I tell him? The clock was ticking. In 15 minutes, Gerald would make his speech. He expected someone from LM Holdings to step forward. He just didn't know that person was already here, standing alone by the buffet in a simple green dress. I took a deep breath. Sometimes in business, as in life, the most powerful move is simply showing up as your authentic self. If you're still with me, I want to thank you. Your time is valuable, and the fact that you've chosen to spend it with me means everything. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about underestimated people turning the tables. Leave a comment telling me what you would do if you were in my shoes at this moment. Would you reveal yourself or keep your secret a little longer? What happened next would change everything, not just for me, but for Derek, Tasha, and everyone at Patterson Tech.
I texted back one word, coming. Taking a moment to smooth my dress, I walked toward the restroom first. I needed space to think, to breathe.
The marble countertop felt cool beneath my trembling hands as I stared at my reflection. The same faith that had weathered a husband's death, raised a daughter alone, and built an empire in secret looked back at me. Plain, unassuming, powerful. "You can do this, Lorraine," I whispered to myself. When I emerged, the crowd was already gathering around the grand staircase. Waiters circulated with fresh champagne. Gerald stood at the top, microphone in hand, with Derek beaming proudly beside him. Tasha spotted me and waved me over. "Mom, there you are. Come stand with us." "I'm fine here, honey," I said, remaining at the edge of the crowd. Gerald tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this momentous occasion." The room hushed. Glasses stopped clinking. All eyes turned to the Patterson men. For 40 years, I've had the privilege of building Patterson Tech from a small software shop into the company it is today. But all good things evolved, and it's time for a new chapter. Gerald's smile widened. He clearly thought this was his coronation. After careful consideration, our board has accepted an acquisition offer that will secure our company's future while preserving its legacy. Gerald's voice swelled with emotion. "Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that Patterson Tech Solutions has been acquired by LM Holdings." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Gerald's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the announcement he'd expected. This strategic partnership will provide the resources and vision to take Patterson into a new era of innovation, Gerald continued. "And I'm particularly excited to introduce you to the remarkable person behind LM Holdings." My heart pounded so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. Gerald scanned the crowd expectantly. "Is the representative from LM Holdings present?" A heavy silence fell. Gerald leaned over to whisper something to his father, looking annoyed. Gerald frowned, checking his watch. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I'm here, Gerald." Heads turned. A path cleared as I walked toward the staircase, my sensible shoes silent on the marble floor. Confusion bloomed on Gerald's face, then recognition, then shock. "Lorraine!" Derek's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to horror in the span of seconds. "Wait! What?" I climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. When I reached Gerald, he handed me the microphone with hands that weren't quite steady. "Thank you, Gerald." My voice came out calm, clear. "For those who don't know me, I'm Lorraine Matthews. Some of you know me as Tasha's mother. Others might recognize me from my work in hospital administration." I paused, letting my gaze sweep the now silent crowd. What most of you don't know is that I'm also the founder and CEO of LM Holdings. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Tasha's mouth had fallen open, her eyes wide with shock. But it was Derek's face that told the real story, ashen, stunned as the implications crashed down on him. We believe in its potential. We believe in its workforce, and we believe that with proper leadership, it can reclaim its position as an innovator in healthcare technology. Derek found his voice. This is some kind of joke." I turned to him, my expression neutral. "No joke, Derek. The papers were signed 3 days ago. The final documents will be executed tomorrow morning." His eyes darted wildly. "Dad, you sold to her? You sold to my mother-in-law without telling me?" Gerald looked uncomfortable. "I sold to LM Holdings. I had no idea Lorraine was the owner." Derek's face flushed deep red. He grabbed the microphone from my hand. "This is ridiculous. She's not qualified. She's just a—" He caught himself, suddenly aware of all the eyes on him. "I'm just a what, Derek?" I asked quietly, not needing the microphone to be heard in the silent room. The words hung in the air like glass about to shatter. Several people gasped. Tasha's hand flew to her mouth. "I heard what you said earlier." My voice remained steady. Perhaps now you understand why appearances can be deceiving. I gently took the microphone back from his limp hand. As the new majority owner of Patterson Tech, I look forward to working with everyone who shares our vision for growth and innovation. There will be changes, yes, but change brings opportunity. I handed the microphone back to Gerald, who appeared both impressed and mortified. Thank you for this wonderful party, Gerald. I believe we have much to discuss tomorrow. As I descended the stairs, the crowd parted again. Some people looked stunned. Others seemed impressed. A few were already approaching with business cards extended. Tasha stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. Whether from shock, embarrassment, or pride, I couldn't tell. Derek remained at the top of the stairs, his future suddenly as uncertain as his expression. The golden boy had just discovered the woman he'd dismissed might now decide his fate. And this was only the beginning.
The days following the party unfolded like a slow-motion earthquake. Aftershocks rippled through our family and the company, shifting foundations we'd all taken for granted. Derek tried damage control immediately. The morning after the party, flowers arrived at my house, extravagant arrangements with apologetic notes. A misunderstanding, he called it, words taken out of context. I didn't respond. At Patterson Tech, the transition began in earnest. My team conducted comprehensive reviews of every department, every project, every executive. I requested detailed reports on Derek's leadership decisions over the past 2 years. The picture that emerged wasn't flattering. He diverted R&D funding to marketing, my CFO noted during our first board meeting. 3 critical product updates are behind schedule. 2 major clients are considering other vendors. Derek sat across the conference table, alternating between defensive posturing and awkward attempts at ingratiation. I was positioning us for growth, he insisted, building brand visibility. Brand visibility doesn't matter if your product fails to deliver, I responded calmly. Within 2 weeks, it became clear that Derek's position as COO was untenable. The board, now under my direction, voted to restructure the executive team. Derek was offered a lower role, managing client relationships, a significant demotion with a corresponding pay cut. His reaction was explosive. "This is personal. She's punishing me because of what I said at a party." "No, Derek," I told him evenly. "I'm making business decisions based on performance data. Nothing more, nothing less." He resigned the next day, claiming irreconcilable differences in vision. The executive team seemed collectively relieved. Tasha, meanwhile, was processing her own complex emotions. She showed up at my house unannounced one evening, her eyes red from crying. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, standing in my living room. "Mom, all these years you let me think we were just getting by." "We were never just getting by, Tasha. We had everything we needed. But you're a billionaire. You let me marry Derek without knowing who you really were." I took her hands in mine. "Would you have wanted me to tell Derek about my wealth before you married? Would that have been a good basis for a marriage?" She looked away. "I heard what he said about you at the party." "I know, honey. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm the one who should be sorry. I never saw him clearly, or maybe I did, but I ignored it." The following weeks revealed cracks in their marriage that had existed long before the party. Derek's behavior had changed once they were married. Subtle criticisms, controlling finances, isolating Tasha from friends who didn't fit his image. "He's not the man I thought he was," she admitted during another visit. "The way he's acting now, blaming you for everything, I don't recognize him anymore." Their separation was announced 6 weeks after the party.
Tasha moved into a condo downtown, focusing on her own career, rediscovering her independence. Through it all, I maintained my regular routine, still living in my modest home, still wearing my comfortable clothes, still shopping at the same grocery store. Wealth hadn't changed me before. Public knowledge of it wouldn't change me now. But people's perceptions changed. Business acquaintances who once dismissed me now sought my advice. Community organizations suddenly found room on their boards. Old friends became awkward, unsure how to relate to the new me. Only Rita stayed constant. "They're all idiots," she said during our weekly coffee. "You're still just Lorraine." 3 months after the party, Gerald Patterson requested a private meeting. He looked older, more subdued. "I owe you an apology, Lorraine, for my son's behavior and for my own blindness." "You don't owe me anything, Gerald." He studied me curiously. "May I ask you something personal? Did you buy Patterson Tech because of Derek? Was this revenge?" I smiled slightly, the question everyone had been too afraid to ask directly. "That's what people assume, isn't it? That I orchestrated this elaborate plan to humiliate Derek." I shook my head. The truth is both simpler and more complicated than that. And that's when I told him the real story behind the acquisition, a truth that would surprise everyone who thought they understood what had happened that night. Looking back, my journey to wealth began on the worst day of my life. When my husband Thomas died suddenly of a heart attack, I was left with a 4-year-old daughter, a mortgage, and a $250,000 life insurance policy. The money felt substantial then, enough to keep us afloat while I figured out our future. "Mama, when is Daddy coming home?" Tasha would ask, her small hands tugging at my sleeve. I'd hold her close, fighting back tears. "Daddy's with the angels now, baby, but he's watching over us." Those early years were brutal. I worked night shifts at Atlanta Memorial Hospital as a nurse, then picked up weekend office cleaning jobs. I'd come home with aching feet, sometimes crying in the shower so Tasha wouldn't hear me, but I never let her see me break. "You're the strongest person I know, Lorraine," my colleague Rita once told me. I wasn't strong, just determined that Tasha would have opportunities I never had. What changed everything was a chance conversation with an elderly patient named Mr. Winters. He was a retired real estate investor who took a liking to me during his hospital stay. "You're smart, practical, and you listen," he told me one night. 3 qualities that make a good investor. When he recovered, he offered to mentor me. I invested $50,000 of the insurance money into a rundown property in a neighborhood on Atlanta's west side. Everyone said I was crazy, but I had done my research. The city was planning infrastructure improvements there. 2 years later, I sold that property for triple my investment. By then, I'd finished my hospital administration degree and moved into management. Each raise, each bonus went straight into my next investment. Tasha bloomed into a brilliant young woman. I pushed her to excel in school, and she did, graduating with honors before earning her MBA. She never knew that by the time she finished college, my net worth had crossed 8 figures. "Mom, I don't understand why you still live in this little house," she'd say, exasperated. "You could afford something nicer." But I loved our modest 3-bedroom home with its creaking porch swing and hand-tended garden. Wealth hadn't changed me, and I wanted to keep it that way. Then came my biggest break. A young medical programmer named Raj approached me about investing in his healthcare security startup. Something in his determined eyes reminded me of myself. I put in $2 million into Medilink, almost everything I had at the time. 3 years later, that investment was worth over $300 million. By the time Tasha met Derek, I was secretly sitting on a fortune that would have made his family's wealth look modest by comparison. But only 3 people in the world knew: my attorney, my accountant, and my friend Rita. Derek swept into Tasha's life like a hurricane, handsome, charismatic, from a good family, as he never tired of mentioning. I saw how he dazzled her with expensive dates and grand gestures. "He makes me feel like a princess, Mom," she gushed. I smiled and nodded, but I noticed things: how the waitstaff tensed when he approached, how quickly his charm vanished when he didn't get his way, the dismissive glances he'd throw my way when Tasha wasn't looking. Still, I said nothing. This was Tasha's choice to make. 3 months before that fateful party, my investment group began examining Patterson Tech. The company had solid foundations, but was failing to innovate. Gerald was ready to retire, and Derek was floundering in his expanded role. My team approached them anonymously through LM Holdings, a private entity named after my initials. The board was enthusiastic, but Derek fought against the sale. "Some outside investor will gut the company," he argued in board meetings, unaware that the investor was his mother-in-law. What Derek didn't know was that the company was already in trouble his leadership was making worse, and the clock was ticking on a decision that would change all our lives forever.
Life has settled into a new normal now. I still live in my modest home, though I finally hired a gardener for my aging knees' sake. I still drive a practical car, albeit a newer hybrid model, and I still prefer my cardigans and sensible shoes to designer labels. The difference is that I no longer hide who I am. My philanthropy is now public, funding scholarships for single parents, investing in women-owned businesses, supporting healthcare access in underserved communities. My wealth is a tool for good, not a secret to protect. Tasha visits every Sunday for dinner. Sometimes she brings a friend, a kind architect named Thomas, who looks at her with genuine admiration. They're taking things slow. She's learned to value substance over flash. Last month, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Derek, written on expensive stationery with his new company's letterhead. "Dear Lorraine," it began, "I've been doing a lot of reflecting." What followed was either the most sincere apology a humbled man has ever written, or the most calculated attempt to rebuild a bridge he'd burned. Perhaps a bit of both. I haven't decided how to respond yet. Some lessons take longer to learn than others. Some wounds need more time to heal. That's the thing about family dynamics. They're rarely simple, seldom fully resolved. Just when you think the story has ended, another chapter begins. Next week, I'll tell you about my brother's family and the inheritance that nearly tore them apart. It's a tale of betrayal deeper than Derek's, reconciliation more challenging than Tasha's, and a twist that proves blood isn't always thicker than water. If you've appreciated my story, please subscribe to hear more true accounts of family trials and triumphs. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your comments mean the world to me. Tell me what resonated most with you about this experience. Remember, in a world that often values appearance over substance, the quiet ones are sometimes the most powerful. The humble ones are often the most wealthy in all the ways that truly matter. Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Until next time, this is Lorraine Matthews reminding you that dignity doesn't shout, it simply stands its ground.